Well, welcome back and thank you. So we were discussing the community standards bylaw, and I believe we have a motion ready to be set. Councillor Wiley?
All right, I'm ready with a motion that relates to the delegate, Sam Parsons. So this is that council can direct administration to draft a bylaw to amend community standards amending bylaw number 2327 for council's consideration of the following amendments at the October 18th, 2023 regular council meeting. To reduce a minimum penalty for violations from $500 to $100, and the specified penalty for violations from $1,000 to $200 in section 2.3 of the bylaw. To change the definition of graphic images to means a visual image showing or purporting to show a dismembered human fetus in section 2.1 of the bylaw, and to delete the requirement for the sender to clearly identify the sender and the sender's address, as seen in section 2.2 of the bylaw. And I'd like to speak to the motion.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
So I take our Charter of Rights and Freedoms very seriously. Our charter, which has served us for over 40 years, balances our individual freedoms, but also shows some collective responsibility. Our charter protects our freedom of expression, including our freedom to publish and distribute printed material, but it also recognizes that there must be some limits reasonable in a free and democratic society. So if we take a look at this, what we've come to call graphic images bylaw, my thoughts are that this bylaw ought to put some limit on the distribution of graphic material for the protection of the innocence of our children. So I don't know how many people listening at home received one of the graphic images at their house, but fortunately in my family, I have 5 children, some of them quite young. It was my 17-year-old that found it on our front deck. So there needs to be some limitations on the type of graphic material that was being distributed. Nevertheless, the bylaw, in my opinion, overreaches. I just think we need to tweak the bylaw to better reflect the balance seen in our charter of balancing rights. So it could be interpreted that this bylaw is in violation of Section 2B of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, specifically as it relates to the freedom of expression, since the bylaw's definition of graphic imagery seems specifically to only target pro-life information. It does not target graphic images of, say, for example, animal cruelty, human trafficking, or even, my goodness, cigarette warning labels. And the words in our current bylaw of mammal fetus in the definition for fetus in section 2.1 of the bylaw limit pro-life groups to even just use an image of a preborn baby, that of a healthy baby in utero, that they could use, that a pro-life group could use going door to door just to get a conversation going. So, and thirdly, I think the penalties in this bylaw, as mentioned by the delegate, are far too punitive. They seem specifically designed to silence pro-life groups. So with all that being said, I think by and large, the intent of the bylaw is good, and we do need to have some limits on the ability to distribute this violently graphic imaging that was showing up this summer. But at the exact same time, I think we need to be very, very careful that we're not overreaching on the charter. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Wiley. Is there anybody else that would like to talk to that motion? Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't support the motion, although I do support some of the intent in it. I appreciate Councillor Wiley's comments about the limitations that freedom of expression have in our community. We all know that our rights to the freedom of speech and freedom of expression in the Charter are very much tied to the responsibility that goes with it. And so in terms of the first point, to reducing the minimum penalty of the violations that are specified, I don't agree with that. I think that violations such as this are very disturbing. They create they have the potential to create a great deal of discord, and I think that safeguarding children and vulnerable populations is something that is innate to anybody that's making bylaws in a community. And I also believe that putting, in response to our speaker today, who I appreciate people having the right to come forward, I appreciate that everyone has the right to deliver mail to someone's doorstep unless they have that little sign from Canada Post that says you're not allowed to. But on the other hand, this did not prevent these people from delivering the material in an opaque envelope. And in terms of having to identify themselves, saying that you belong to Pro-Life Calgary with their address, they have an office. It's easy for me to find their office. Nobody's saying put Denise Peterson 702 2nd Street on that envelope. They're saying to identify the sender. And so I received opaque envelopes in my mailbox. I'm sure other people on this council did as well, with those graphic images enclosed. I received them in my mail. I've heard others of you say that you received the same. There was no restriction to this group in doing that, and they were able to express their freedom to promote their ideals in that environment. In this community, people were going door to door and leaving extraordinarily graphic images, unwanted graphic images, as Councillor Wiley characterized them, violent graphic images on people's doorsteps and leaving. No one was knocking on people's doors to engage in respectful conversation. And I have groups that do that regularly, and I appreciate them coming to my door and engaging in conversation very often on points that are in opposition to my own, but they have the right to do that, and I have the right to engage or not. But when these graphic images are simply dropped on the doorstep, the other side of that, the responsible side of that, those people's rights have been violated. And so I think too that promoting community well-being, that graphic images can clearly, we heard that around this table, we heard this at this council table, that graphic images negatively affect the mental health and well-being of individuals. That's also, wanting to look after people is also a pro-life statement. And so I very much object to the notion that the people sitting behind this table, because of bringing this forward, are not pro-life. I find that really disturbing in and of itself. I also think that balancing freedom of expression is a goal of every democracy. Freedom of speech and freedom of expression is never absolute. And so my freedom of expression doesn't go so far as to disrupt and cause grief in somebody else's life. And so I think that seeking that balance in a democracy is really, really critical. As in terms of Councillor Wiley's second point about the definition of graphic images, I understand what he's saying, and I understand why the bylaw was written in the way it was. And so does everybody sitting behind this table, I believe. And so I think that brighter minds than us who understand the contentiousness that happens in society have chosen to take the tack that they did in order to bring the broadest possible representation to the table without restricting the rights of these people that want to distribute this material in a way that's appropriate. It leaves them that opportunity. I also think that in terms of sorry, that's Councillor Wiley's third point, well, second point. And in terms of the penalties on bullying and making that distinction, I don't like utilizing one space to make a case on another. I think that the $250 fine for bullying was council's opportunity to say we don't approve of it in community. But we also understood very clearly when that bylaw came up that bullying also has a space in the criminal code where it's dealt with in the criminal code, not just within this council's bylaws. And so there are opportunities outside of that, which there wasn't in terms of this particular bylaw. I want to go back to the words that our mayor articulated when this first came to the July 27th meeting. He did say, this is an emotional subject for many. And when you go door to door, you don't know if the person has experienced a loss or if the materials can end up in the hands of a child. Requiring these types of pamphlets to be enclosed in an opaque envelope adds a layer of protection while still upholding the importance of allowing people the freedom to express their opinion. I agreed with that then, I agree with it now. And so while I understand that there are people that don't agree with the actions of this council in bringing this forward, I'm fully supportive of the Community Standards Bylaw 23-27. I think it stands to protect freedom of expression, the rights of people to express how they feel, and it also protects and safeguards residents and children from unwanted graphic images.
Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you. I would just like to ask the members of council who voted for this at the meeting, the previous meeting, why or how is an image of an ultrasound of a healthy baby, why would that be construed as a graphic image?
And Councillor Wiley?
Yeah, so my concern, one of my main concerns out of a few with this bylaw is that, for those who aren't aware, it's called the graphic images bylaw, yet graphic images in the bylaw are defined as any human, or sorry, not even human, it's defined as any mammal fetus. And so that would include, again, that would forbid a pro-life group in Strathmore the ability to simply go around and start a conversation going door to door with a picture of a beautiful, healthy, unborn baby. And so this bylaw certainly falls short on that front among the other two that I've highlighted.
And Councillor Peterson?
Just to Councillor Wiley, that is certainly not true. You're not preventing anybody from going anywhere to engage in conversations with people. We're never, ever have prevented that in this bylaw. You and I both know that as teachers, I've taught human sexuality in the classroom. This bylaw is never, ever going to impact that. It's not going to impact the work that we do in the general mode of our community and the conversations that I have with my neighbors, with my children, with my grandchildren, and everyone else. It's not. The intent of this bylaw was to protect, and it was never to interfere with the conversations that people might have with one another. That was never the purposefulness, and it was never the intent. And there's all kinds of interpretations that can be drawn from this, but everyone sitting behind this table knows what drove the bylaw and why we utilized the Calgary bylaw to bring forward in this community for the same reasons. And it was to protect vulnerable persons in community from extraordinarily graphic images.
Councillor Wiley?
Sure, so I'm also not in favor of the extraordinarily graphic images, but the distribution of any pro-life literature with a baby in utero is now forbidden in the town of Strathmore.
Councillor Peterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I would say, if there was a concern, and there was something that a pro-life group wanted to promote, and they wanted to promote healthy pregnancy, they wanted to promote whatever it was with regards to the positions that they hold, I think there are endless mechanisms to do that in front of this council.
Is there any more discussion? Councillor Montgomery.
So I'll ask the question again to the members of council that voted for this last time. What about a image of an ultrasound of a healthy baby can be construed as graphic?
Councillor Langmaid.
I just want to point out that I'm actually refusing to answer the question on the basis that all statements must be made through the mayor, and I just don't think that line of questioning is helpful in this situation. So just, I'm not in any way rudely refusing to respond. I just think procedurally the question is problematic. Thank you.
Councillor Montgomery.
Through the chair to members of council who voted for this last time, what about an image of an unborn healthy ultrasound image of an unborn healthy baby could be construed as graphic?
Why don't you answer your question, Councillor Montgomery? You seem to have the answer. So why don't you answer it? Then we would not have to worry about this baiting issue.
Councillor
Well, to
Montgomery.
be honest, I wasn't here at the meeting where this was passed. Had I been, I certainly would have pointed out that the definition was far too broad, but not broad enough, of course, to actually capture other forms of graphic images. As you mentioned, I think the intent behind this was clear. I don't think there's any mistaking what the intent was. Had it been to protect the community from simply graphic images, we wouldn't have defined graphic images as to capture things that, say, if a business that provided ultrasounds wanted to advertise in town, they would not be allowed to demonstrate their service by dropping off flyers door to door, because we have captured something that most people would not consider graphic, which is an image of a healthy baby. We've managed to capture that under this bylaw, and I would like to know, through the chair, what about that qualifies as graphic?
Councillor Langmaid.
I think we can all think with broader minds in terms of what may be considered graphic. And sometimes graphic is the combination of two things. The combination of the visual message that you receive along with the words that go with it. That is what can make something that may, in other cases, be unharmful and not graphic, a graphic image. As to kind of the discussion that's going on about it doesn't capture all graphic images, that is correct, it doesn't. And it can be expanded in the future. But I think it would be I think it would be inappropriate for council to ban graphic images that have not been distributed. I think it would be inappropriate for us to sit here and debate a list of things that we may consider graphic. We act based on the situations we see in our community. And this was the situation that we saw in our community and the situation that we were asked and tasked to handle. And we handled that. I think it would have been inappropriate for us to reach and extend that definition to items that we have not had a concern with in this community. If we do have other graphic images distributed in the same manner throughout this community, I would be happy to hear from anyone who would like to amend that definition, and I would be happy to hear that and consider it. But at this time, I think it would be an error in judgment to define graphic images that have not been distributed within the town.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson.
I'm not going to address the question because of the contextual nature of it, but what I will address is Councillor Montgomery's concern. So I was a principal in the school, in the schools here in town for a very long time, and I ran schools that catered to a specific group, to many groups, but particularly to young parents, to young parenting teens who needed a school to go to. And they needed a place, a safe place to be able to go to school and be able to have the best possible prenatal care and to have their babies and to continue their schooling. And those outreach schools in our various communities were embraced by this community in every such way. And so there were programs within our school where we distributed material to the community, lots of material to the community. But we were really proud of what we were distributing, and we distributed them with our return address on them. So everybody knew exactly who we were and what we believed in and what we were doing. And so anybody wanting to promote what you are speaking to has full range to do that if they want to follow the bylaw. There's no problem. It's perfectly acceptable and welcome.
Councillor Montgomery.
Councillor Wiley, I do appreciate you bringing this forward, this amendment. It certainly strikes a reasonable balance, and I think it does a better job of addressing what qualifies as a graphic images when it relates to abortion. And as well, I also appreciate that you've attempted to at least help protect people from other members of the community from doing negative things towards them by having to provide their, essentially like this part of it where they have to attach their name and whatnot. I mean, that's obviously to basically, as was mentioned by Mr. Parsons in the response from the town, this was meant so that people would, let's say, assess the risk about whether they wanted to follow through with expressing their opinion on this. It's a complex subject, and there's a lot of emotions, and for good reason, a lot of emotion around this subject. I think it's important as government that when we are taking steps to limit the freedoms of the people that we govern, that we are judicious and sparing and very considerate about how we restrict those freedoms. And we only restrict them as much as absolutely necessary to accomplish whatever it is we are seeking to accomplish. In this case, we're seeking to protect the community from graphic images, not graphic ideas or the idea of graphic images, but actual graphic images, which is why obviously banning the distribution of ultrasound images of healthy babies doesn't really make sense, especially when, as I mentioned, it would essentially prevent a business that provides ultrasounds for healthy babies to just advertise door to door like any other business. And so while I support this amendment or this attempt to amend the bylaw.
Point of order, Your Worship. We didn't ban them. We just said they had to put their name on them. There's a difference.
Well, actually, we did say that they had to put it in a blank envelope, right, which, again, that goes beyond what any other business would have to do, you know, on which...
Point of order, Your Worship, that's not true.
It.
That is not true.
Can you tell me another business in town that needs to put their pamphlets in a blank envelope or face a $1,000 penalty?
It's out of context.
Anyways, I'll leave it at that. I think we should be more careful in the future about the bylaws that we pass, especially when we're restricting the freedoms of people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Langmaid.
I just want to reassure everyone, there is still an opportunity to distribute those images. There are actually two, I'm thinking of two, one through Canada Post, and the other is through including it in an envelope. We haven't banned the distribution, we've put regulation around how it can be distributed. I think it's also worth noting that the easiest way to not be caught up in this is to have a pamphlet without a graphic image on it, because that would require absolutely no controls on it. If you just remove the graphic image, there's nothing, this doesn't ban the message, this doesn't ban you from being able to distribute it. You would be able to distribute that flyer without an envelope, without identifying the sender. There are, as my colleague, Councillor Peterson said, there are many ways for these views to still be expressed in our community, and the number of envelopes I have received in my mailbox, because my address is public, attests to that. So thank you to all of those who are sending me the lovely mail. I don't believe this goes too far. I really don't. I'm not in support of this motion, and I'm hopeful that with one more discussion on this tonight, we can hopefully make a final decision and move on to other business that's pressing around the town of Strathmore.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid, and I guess with my and Councillor Wiley, I was going to say something.
Sure, I'm just going to ask that this vote is recorded, and also just keep in mind when we're voting that every time the word graphic images is said, we're including that of a healthy in utero baby. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Wiley. And again, I just echo a lot of the sentiments here from my other councillors. This is something that was an emotional issue. It has different effects on everybody. And we have not banned the rights, as Councillor Peterson has said. We've put, they can still send them out. It has to be in the opaque envelope with the sender's return address on it. But we're also, a lot of other communities within the province of Alberta are following what City of Calgary and what we have done. Within the last little while, there's been quite a few communities in southern Alberta, I don't know the numbers offhand, who have passed a bylaw which reads almost identical to what we have. So on that, we will put the amendment to a vote. All in favor of the amendment? Against? That amendment is defeated. Thank you. And our next delegation is John Trofimuck. Would you please come to the podium? And if you can just press the button on your mic to light it up. Thank you.
Good evening, Your Worship and Strathmore councillors. I'm here representing Lambert Village across the street, independent seniors community, about all the noise and stuff that goes on at the pagoda just over here. Every night, we listen to squealing tires, loud vehicles. Sounds like most of them don't have mufflers. There's horn honking going on, and this goes on till it starts anytime after supper. It goes till midnight, sometimes even later. In the summertime, we can't even open our windows to get fresh air or whatever because it's too noisy in the evening. And sitting on the deck is no fun because you can't, because of the noise, you can't even talk or listen to music or anything. It's disgusting. And the speeding along Park Lane Drive right here, they'll start off at that stop sign and go as fast as they can before they hit the curb. And one of these days, something's going to happen here. So it'd be nice to see a lower speed limit here, maybe 30K or something like that. And I don't know what can be done at the pagoda there, but maybe a gate put in or hours of operation unless you're a special group that wants to use it. because like we're all getting tired of it. Like we're here to enjoy our retirement and it's hard to do. Like, you know, we listen to it every single night, you know, not just certain nights, but every night. So I don't know what this town can do about it. And I have phoned the RCMP. I've talked lots of times when they're making the noise there. I phone and the RCMP will come. By the time they get here, they're gone. And so you don't know how many phone calls I've made this summer to the RCMP. And they try to do their best, but they just can't, you know. And hopefully, maybe you guys can do something to help us out so we can enjoy our peace and quiet over there. So thank you for listening to me. And these are all my friends that came over to support me. So they're all from Lambert Village and a couple from Park Lane Place across the street. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trofimak. Are there any, Councillor Mitzner?
I'd like to thank the residents of Lambert Village for coming out tonight. I have a question. This wasn't an ongoing concern, and I'm wondering if it started only after the gazebo was installed.
Oh, can you please come to the podium?
The gazebo's been here for quite a while. We've lived here for 5 years. And I think most of the noise was over here before the city hall was built. And after this building was built, then they moved over there because they had nice, freshly paved parking lots. So everything happens over there now.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah.
Is there anything else that anybody would like to, Councillor Langmaid, then Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm actually prepared with a motion for this evening. I'd like to move to ask administration to prepare a report that outlines potential remedial actions to address the noise complaints along Park Lane Drive and within the rear parking lot surrounding the pavilion. Is that, I'm looking at administration to let me know if that's specific enough, and to return with that report to the October 11th Committee of the Whole meeting.
Yes, you can.
It was not the noise on Park Lane so much as the speed and the noise here. Sorry.
Amend that to be the noise and speed along Park Lane Drive. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid. We have a motion on the table. Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
You betcha. So my motion is to direct administration to prepare a report outlining potential remedial actions that could be taken to address the speed and noise of traffic along Park Lane Drive and within the pavilion parking lot to the rear of the building here. And to return with that report to the October 11th Committee of the Whole meeting. That's the end.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid. We now have a motion on the table. Would anybody like to speak to it? Councillor Montgomery, then Councillor Mitzner.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is my second term on council, as I mentioned, and you know, unfortunately, I remember all too well the fact that this has been brought back or brought to us before this, and I even have in my notes here the fact that it does predate the building of the Strathmore Municipal Building. And it is high time that we do something about it. I live nearby. I walk through Kinsman Park most evenings, actually. I know exactly what you're talking about. I walk through in the mornings. I see the garbage that's left behind. Frankly, I don't like it, and I think it's about time we do something about it. And you know, that doesn't mean that we should be spending more money, but you know, I'm sure there's resources that we can redirect. That you know, it's going to take a bit of well, basically, it's going to take us actually caring about the problem and wanting to do something about it and making sure something gets done. And so I think we're committed. I believe that, you know, we've heard the message, at least I have, and I think it's high time we do something. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Mitzner, then Councillor Peterson.
Can you also add to the report, please, for a cost of a gate or an alternative to close off the specific area that's troublesome after, say, 6 o'clock at night, providing there's no other events?
I believe that will be in the report that administration is going to prepare for us for the October 11th Committee of the Whole.
Okay, I only heard speed and noise. I didn't hear anything about a gate, sorry.
Well,
Part of the solution. Right?
that will be
Okay,
part of the
thank you.
solution. That will be in the report. Thank you, Councillor Metzner. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I really do support this, and I hope our senior leadership team has time to do this, but I want to assure you that it didn't come with the building of the gazebo. It was long before. And the reason I know this is that my good friend Rita, who lives in Lambert Village, used to phone me very, very early in the morning, like at 1, and tell me what was, this was before the building was here, when the noise was on the other side of the parking lot. And she was pretty adamant, and it was a problem then, but it wasn't as close, and there wasn't a sound tunnel going into your building. And I'm really sorry that your quality of life has been disrupted, and I know that it has been. And I want also to say to you that this senior leadership team, they have heard you, and they have been discussing this and working on it and thinking about solutions diligently. They know that. They've heard you clearly, and you've been a really good representative of your community, and I so much appreciate that. And when Rita used to call me, you know, and now this is worse than putting my return address on an envelope, because I used to come down and take pictures of the license plates and give them to our bylaw, who could then go and tell on their mothers, you know. And but you know, that was neither. That was like, you know, I hear what you say. The RCMP have tried their best, and we've heard from them too. You know, we've talked about everything. We've talked about better lighting, piping music in that they wouldn't appreciate. You know, we've discussed many different solutions, and there is a solution. We just have to resolve, as Councillor Langmaid has put forward, a way forward. But I want to thank our senior leadership team for the work that they've put into it to date, and I thank you for bringing it forward on behalf of all of our community.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, and just to speak to my own motion for a quick second, I also want to thank you, Mr. Trofimiak, and all of your supporters for coming here today to reinforce this message. We know it's been an issue, and you know, I'm not sure what the solution is going to be. I'm looking forward to this report to find out what some of our options are and how we might be able to address this. I know one night after our council meeting where we discussed it, I thought I would do what adults used to do to me when I was a teenager and hanging out somewhere I shouldn't, which is basically just drive around and make me feel nervous. Well, I did not make those teenagers look nervous at all. I don't know if I just have a soft face, or maybe it's physical size. Maybe I'm not intimidating enough, but I couldn't my driving around with a grumpy face had absolutely no effect. So I did try that, but I'm hoping that through this report we can find something that's going to actually be effective, because my face is not the scary thing that they're looking for. So thank you very much for coming tonight. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to this, to hopefully receiving this report on October 11th if this motion passes this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid. Councillor Wiley.
Sure, I have a question for admin through the chair. I also had created a motion tonight, but mine specifically, I would like to hear back from the police and policing options. So I'm wondering if it would make more sense to just simply do an amendment to Councillor Langmaid's to include policing options. My concern with that, though, is the October 11th due date is coming very quickly, and I think that would be difficult to get back in such a short amount of time.
Through the chair, sorry, it's the voice in the sky here. It's Kevin. We've been working with the RCMP on this. The options that will be brought forward will be inclusive of RCMP input. So I think it would be inclusive that amendment wouldn't be necessary.
Sure, so CA Scoba, you're just saying it isn't even necessary to include the policing part. It's already assumed.
Yeah, we've been looking at those options in a discussion with the detachment commander, and you know, I plan to ask him to attend the meeting when we come back on October 4th.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wiley and CAO Scoble. Any more discussion? Regarding Councillor Langmaid and Councillor Wiley?
Thank you. I just want to confirm with administration that October 11th is a realistic and appropriate date to request. I'm seeing no one shooting me evil looks, so I'm going to say that it's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid. Councillor Wiley.
Yeah, I also just want to echo the rest of council and thanking all of you for coming out. I heard it described as it's disturbing your peace. It's a much bigger issue than that. It's a security concern. It's a lawlessness concern. And it's a concern that I've heard the rest of council here share. So thank you so much for bringing this back, for being persistent, and know that we hear you.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid. And Carol Curry would like to say something from the audience. Please come to the podium, press the red button, and just please state your name and spelling for the administration. Thank you.
My name is Carol Curry, and I live at Park Lane Place. I represent them tonight, and I live right against the fence. They have gone through our fence twice. One night, they were almost in my living room, and they were injured, and the car was demolished. Our fence has been hit a few times. What Park Lane Place would like to see is a speed bump. It would slow them up. That's all we ask. We are sick and tired of the noise every night from, like he says, from supper time till midnight or after. Saturday night, Sunday night, it might go on till 2 or 3. So we would like to see something done. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, and I appreciate your comments, and I believe that is something that will also come back in the report. As we had mentioned, administration is going to be doing a very detailed report to come back to council on October the 11th for future discussion. So again, thank you to everyone from Park Lane Place and Lambert Village. So we do have a motion on the table. Or is there anybody else that wants to speak to this this delegation? All right, we have a motion on the table. Can you please read that again, Councillor Langmaid?
You betcha. So I move that we direct administration to prepare a report outlining, I might not get the words exactly the same, I didn't have it written down, but to direct administration to prepare a report outlining potential mitigations for speed and noise along Park Lane Drive and noise and disturbing activities that occur at the Kinsman Park Pavilion, and to return with that report on October 11th, at the October 11th Committee of the Whole meeting. And it's our understanding that that report will discuss speed bumps, gates, and potential RCMP inclusion.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you. And to our delegations, Mr. Parson, Mr. Trofimuk, and all the people from Lambert Village and Park Lane Place, we thank you for attending the meeting tonight. Okay, moving on. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there anything that we would like removed from the consent agenda? Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would request that we remove item 11.1, letter from the Royal Canadian Legion regarding National Legion Week, received September 11th, 2023.
That's what I was gonna do.
Thank you for that. Can we have somebody move, or is there?
I can move it.
Sorry, Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. I just have a question for administration regarding 8.3, the letter to the Mid-Sized Cities Mayor Caucus. So my question is, when do we, as a council, need to approve the signing of a letter? Like, I noticed, for instance, that the mayor signed a letter in support of the developer.
There's a traffic jam in the hall.
A lot of burnouts out there.
They're talking about noise.
I'm sorry, Councillor Montgomery, I didn't catch the last part of it.
If anyone's
question, if you
wondering
could-
what all the chaos is, the the seniors on bikes were leaving and there was a bit of a traffic jam in the hall, but I think we're ready to move on now, so.
Thanks, Kevin. So my question is just like, so I noticed that the mayor signed a letter of support to CMHC for that developer recently, and we didn't vote on that. So I'm just wondering, like, when does it rise to the occasion where we have to approve the mayor signing something versus the mayor just signing something? Thank you.
So the mayor has to consign a letter on something authorized by council. In the case of the CHMC, it was really, council had approved that through the approval of the land use bylaw, right? So, council has supporting that development and through that approval, and that's basically what that letter was reflecting. It in fact stated that it was consistent with council's strategic plan on affordable housing, which council has approved, and that the council had approved the land use bylaw amendments. So it was just restating stuff that council had already approved. But yes, a letter should be approved by council. In this case, there's no previous motion or direction of council, which is why it's before you this evening.
Great, thank you very much. And that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Peterson.
So, Your Worship, I'd like to remove 8.3 so that we can provide direction. And I'm prepared with a motion.
Sorry, say, you'd like to remove?
I'd like to remove 8.3 from the consent agenda, Your Worship.
Okay,
And then I would move the consent agenda.
okay,
So 8.3 and 11.1.
okay.
Ignore the yellow on them now, yeah.
Okay,
And then with your permission, Your Worship, I would move the council adopt the recommendations of the following agenda reports through an omnibus motion. 7.1, regular council meeting, September 6, 2023. 8.1, corporate strategic plan and financial plan quarterly report, quarter 2, 2023. Council meeting schedule amendment, committee of the whole, October 25th, 2023. And 10.2.1, Marigold Library System meeting minutes.
thank you. All in favor? Approved. Okay, so on 8.3 was removed from the consent agenda. Councillor Peterson, would you like to talk to the, sorry, Jonathan?
No, I think it'd be best, I was just going to ask if you wanted to speak to it, because I don't, Councillor Montgomery wasn't here. So I don't know if you want to speak to it or not, but. Yeah,
Yeah, so before council today is just a draft of that letter to Mid-Sized Cities requesting membership for the town of Strathmore. Mid-Sized Cities does have some parameters that they do like members to have. One of those is to be a city. The other is to have a population greater than 15,000. Having said that, there are members that both are towns and have populations lower than 15,000. So there is some precedence that the town could maybe take advantage of with this request. The benefits to the town of joining this group would just be kind of being able to amplify our voice when it comes to advocating to the provincial government. The town has a lot in common with similar sized cities, so just be an opportunity for the town to join, amplify their voice and work with our neighbors.
Thank you, Jonathan. Councillor Montgomery,
So I'm ready with a motion if you want that right now.
please go ahead.
All right, I will move the council authorize Mayor Fuel to sign the letter regarding Alberta Mid-Sized Cities Mayor Caucus membership as presented in attachment 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Now that we have a motion on the table, would anybody like to speak to that motion? All in favor? And that is carried. All right. Number 9, bylaws. Council procedure bylaw amendments. Is there anybody that would like to make a motion on that? Councillor Montgomery.
Sure, thank you. I will move the council direct administration to bring the council procedure bylaw amending bylaw 23-28 to the October 11th, 2023 committee of the whole meeting. And if I could speak to that.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. So I just think that this is one of these things, like, we spent a bunch of time, I think it was last year possibly. We hired that consultant and, we went through this kind of, fairly rigorously, and kind of made changes based on the advice of the consultant. I think that if we're going to change it again, we should probably have an open and somewhat less structured, like rather than having a debate, but maybe just have a discussion about changes we want to see and why we want to see those changes, just so that we can maybe go into the discussion later with a better understanding of each other. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion on the table. Anyone would like to speak to that? Councillor Peterson.
I'm not in favor of the motion. I think we had a really fulsome debate around procedure bylaw. We had opportunities for council, for which councils were paid to attend in servicing on all kinds of things related to procedure in the work that we do. So this was a simple motion brought forward to in recognition of some of the difficulties that resulted from us not having this in our bylaws. We did used to practice it, but I'm not sure that it actually formed a part of our systemic process in the past. But this was a very, very useful, the motion that Councillor Wagner brought forth last week was a very, very useful part of our procedure in past councils where I sat. And sometimes much to my own dismay when I wanted to bring back something where I'd lost a motion and I had to wait and there had to be a sober second thought. And I had to do a lot of work to convince other councillors to come to the bright side or to the light side. And so I really do think that this is a wise move. I think our procedure bylaw is so much better than it ever has been, and that this is a sound and a simple movement of the process going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Would anybody else like to speak to Councillor Montgomery's amendment? Okay, seeing none, we will vote on Councillor Montgomery's amendment. All in favor? Against? Or, sorry, an motion. So that is defeated. Would anybody else like to talk about the council procedure bylaw or give first reading?
I'm ready with the first reading.
Councillor Wiley.
The council give first reading to bylaw number 2328, being a bylaw to amend the council procedure bylaw 2317.
Thank you. Now that we have, now we can talk about this motion, correct? Not on the first reading. Okay. Now that we have a motion on the table, all in favor? And that motion is passed or carried. Oh, sorry, opposed? Thank you. Sorry. Okay. Carrying on, is there anybody that would like to give second reading to bylaw 2328?
Your Worship, I would move that council give second reading to bylaw 23-28, being a bylaw to amend the council procedure bylaw 23-17.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Now with that motion on the table, does anybody want to speak to it? Councillor Montgomery.
Yeah, so I would just like to go back to what was just said moments ago about, so we did spend a bunch of tax dollars to hire a consultant to go over the procedure bylaw, and we had, as was pointed out, a fairly rigorous discussion. We listened to the advice of the consultant that we paid for, and we agreed with the consultant at the time that it was better to shift away from the policy, I'll say, that we're looking at shifting back to. So I guess, like, why would we go against the advice of the consultant that we hired? And I guess what I would like to know from a proponent of this amendment is, through the chair, what has changed? What has happened that is causing us to make this change at this time? Is there any sort of history that can be pointed to that we are, or, yeah, I guess I'm curious to know what incident has kind of set this off that, or I guess, you know, to make a change like this, I presume there must have been like a series of incidences that, you know, like, that has caused this. We're not just making this decision, you know, or we're looking at making this decision because, you know, to preemptively stop somebody from bringing back something. So I guess, yeah, I would like to know from any proponents through the chair, what exactly is the impetus for this? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to provide some clarification or potential clarification. So I was at the same training, I believe I was at the same training that Councillor Montgomery is referring to, and I have to say I don't recall this being a part of that discussion or him providing any guidance that we should rescind this portion of the procedure, seeing as it was actually not in effect in the procedure at the time that training occurred. So I'm just a little confused there. I honestly, for me, this is important because I think in our code of conduct, we are expected to respect the decisions of council, and part of that is understanding when a decision has been made and respecting that decision and moving forward onto new business. And I think, and right now, we don't have any parameters around that. And, you know, when do we accept the conclusion of an item and move forward? And I think this is a very useful and straightforward way for us to put some guidelines around when we can expect a topic to be decided, and that there is and in addition to that, there is a defined cool down period. You know, we tackle some really difficult situations and some topics that are really close to our hearts, and emotions never make decision-making easy. So for me, what I really appreciate is this cool down period that this defines, that everyone has a chance everyone still has a chance, you know, it still gives you a path forward if you want to revisit something, but it does give everyone a break and a cooling off period to really just reevaluate the larger picture of what we are accomplishing in this town and why we are making the decisions we do. And that's why I'm supportive of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. Through the chair again, I'll ask any people that are considering voting for this to please describe what is I guess, serving as a catalyst for this. Like, so again, I presume we can't be just making this change to preemptively stop people who happen to lose a vote from bringing something back. So has there been some sort of an incident that has, or I guess, like I said, has there been a number of incidences that have caused members of council to feel that this is necessary or required at this time?
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Since I am the one that brought this motion forward, there's been once or twice. Once was a couple of weeks ago where a motion had been approved by council on a bylaw, and it was coming back to be for the bylaw to be rescinded. The week after I believe it was the week after we had, or a couple weeks after we had passed it. To me, it makes us look indecisive and not on the same page. And as councillors, whether we are on the victorious side of the motion, we have to accept what has been laid out or what has been what the side or the motion is. So we have to stand by that as a council. So that was my reasoning for, and I know I've talked to past councillors, and that the 6-month cool-off period, if the motion was being brought back by somebody who was on the prevailing side, or if it was being brought back because of a municipal election. I believe those are pretty significant things that and that was kind of why I wanted to bring that motion forward. Again, big thing is I thought it made us look indecisive and not on the same page, so that is why I brought the motion forward. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to raise my concerns with the line of questioning that's kind of been a theme going on tonight. My responsibility is to remain, is to provide explanation to the people that I'm responsible to, which are the residents of Strathmore. I think it's inappropriate for one councillor to try and, what's the word I want to use here? Influence other councillors to answer a line of questioning from them. We agreed earlier this evening, this is not a courtroom with our guests that were here, but this is, we are not on trial here for our beliefs. We're here to share our points of view and to make decisions in the best interests of the town of Strathmore. And I'm just raising some concern with the style of questioning that I'm hearing on council tonight, and whether that's really appropriate for this setting and for the forum that we're in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid. Councillor Montgomery.
Sorry, were you posing a question to us when you ended that in a question? Or no?
I think it was just.
I'll be very clear. I have no direct questions for you, Councillor
Okay,
Montgomery.
let's,
Thanks.
okay.
So I have a speech that I'd like to read, please, and if you'll hold your point of orders till the end, that'd be great. And if the shoe
Point
fits,
of order?
I guess you can
A
put
point
it
of
forward.
order actually overrules you as a speaker. Just to follow the procedure, a point of order would overrule you. So are you asking for a suspension of the rules, Councillor Montgomery?
It was a joke, Councillor Langmaid.
I'm sorry, I found this to be a very serious thing.
Okay, so let's try and keep this civil. Let's try and keep on track, on pace, and the floor is yours, Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. And as I said, if the shoe fits, feel free to point of order me. So, in a democracy, the unfettered expression of dissenting opinions is not just a privilege, it is the very essence of a vibrant and dynamic society. It serves as a testament to the strength and resilience of a nation's democratic framework. When we silence dissent, we run the risk of strangling the lifeblood of our liberal democracy, imperiling the very foundations upon which our society stands. Dissent, at its core, is a powerful catalyst for progress. It is through the interplay of conflicting ideas that societies evolve, adapt, and mature. By suppressing dissent, we blunt the cutting edge of innovation and hinder the collective growth of our communities. This stifling of creativity and exploration can have far-reaching consequences, impeding advancements in science, technology, and social equality. Moreover, dissent acts as a counterbalance to the concentration of power. It acts as a sentinel against the encroachment of authoritarian tendencies. When dissenting voices are muffled, the path is paved for unchecked authority and potential erosion of civil liberties. It is through the presence of dissent that we ensure accountability, keeping those in power in check, and safeguarding the liberal democratic ideas we hold dear. History provides ample evidence of the transformative potential of dissent. The suffragette movement, the civil rights struggle, and the fight against apartheid and the ending of the residential school system in Canada are all poignant examples of how dissenting voices have shaped the course of nations. It is through the courage and determination of those who dared to challenge the status quo that we have witnessed monumental shifts towards justice, equality, and human rights. Furthermore, suppressing dissent sets a perilous precedent. It signals to citizens that their voices are expendable and their concerns inconsequential. This breeds a corrosive sense of disillusionment and detachment, sowing seeds of apathy and disengagement within the very fabric of democracy. It weakens the bonds between the governed and those entrusted with governance, eroding the trust essential for a healthy democratic society. What are some reasons one might seek to limit dissenting viewpoints? Individuals with authoritarian tendencies may be inclined to suppress dissent as they prioritize centralized power and control over the free exchange of ideas. Some people may resist dissent out of a fear of change, as it can be unsettling or disruptive to established norms and beliefs. Those who lack confidence in their own ideas or beliefs may feel threatened by dissent, viewing it as a challenge to their authority or competence. Loyalty to a particular ideology, group, or leader can sometimes lead individuals to dismiss dissenting voices in favor of a perceived unity or conformity. Some individuals may have a limited perspective, unwilling or unable to consider alternative viewpoints, leading them to ignore appeals to reason. Those focused on short-term gains at the expense of long-term stability and growth may disregard the importance of dissent in fostering progress. Politicians or leaders may find it politically advantageous to suppress dissent in order to maintain power or avoid controversy. People may experience discomfort when confronted with ideas that challenge their established beliefs. This can lead to a psychological defense mechanism where they reject dissenting viewpoints. Some individuals may not fully grasp the broader implications of suppressing dissent, potentially due to a lack of empathy or understanding of the value of diverse perspectives. Those who primarily consume information from sources that reinforce their existing beliefs may not be exposed to dissenting views, leading to a lack of exposure and understanding. It also demonstrates a lack of trust in our fellow council members and those in the public whom they represent, that they will not bring issues back for review based on good reasons, such as inability to attend a particular meeting where an issue is discussed, or that new information has come to light, or some error in the previous decision has been noticed. In conclusion, the act of silencing dissenting voices in a democracy is not merely an infringement on individual liberties, it is an assault on the collective spirit of progress, accountability, and inclusivity. It is a perilous step towards the erosion of democratic values and the potential consolidation of power. Let us stand vigilant in defense of dissent, recognizing it as a force for positive change and cherishing its place at the heart of our democratic ideals. Only through the unfettered expression of dissent can we truly ensure a brighter and more inclusive future for all. When the question is called, I urge you to refuse to raise your hand against our democratic ideals, but rather in support of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. And to that, thank you. I don't think we are impeding the democratic process. We are here in council. We are making motions. We have the right to vote how we feel that we best suit the public. With this bylaw, I think what it does is it introduces, as Councillor Langmaid mentioned, a cool down period. The big thing for me is if there's new information that comes along, it can be reissued. Maybe somebody on the prevailing side has new information that they want to change a motion or rescind a motion or bylaw. I do think that if we don't accept this motion, what happens then? And we pass a bylaw or pass a motion 1 week, the next week it comes back to us again. We vote, it comes back to us again. I think it makes us look indecisive, and I personally myself, I think it's just harmful to us as a council. So that's what I wanted to say. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think we did this in the movement of efficacy and efficiency. And anybody who thinks that this motion interferes with the words that Councillor Montgomery has exposed have not ever looked at our agenda. Because our agenda, Your Worship, is really clear. We can ask questions anytime. We can have discussions anytime. We have administrative inquiries. We have open discussion in our committees of the whole. And just because you don't get your way on a motion doesn't mean that your voice has been silenced. It just means that you have a lot more work to do. If you really believe in what you're doing, then you do what all those groups that Councillor Montgomery identified, what they do. But there is loads of opportunity for anybody sitting in this democratic forum to make their voice heard. And at no time has that ever been stifled by this process in my lengthy term on this council. And I really applaud you for bringing it forward. And I think that what it does is it saves all kinds of money from people who don't like the outcome of a motion being able to hammer the council to death and the senior leadership team by bringing things back over and over again and delays process. I think those are things that are incredibly deleterious to a democratic process. And so I think voices are not silenced, due process is given, and we have a way forward that can make sure that we act with some clarity to bring our community forward in such a way that, that we are not hampering actions.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? So we have a motion on the table for second reading of, I'm sorry, yes, by Councillor Wiley. We have a,
No, I made second reading.
sorry, Councillor Peterson. Oh, okay, sorry, Councillor Wiley, please go ahead.
Sorry, so I was just going to say I am going to support the second reading, but I won't be going further than that because I would just like to give us some time to consider it further. I think Councillor Montgomery made some really good points I'd like to consider, but then also countered by Councillor Peterson. So I'm going to need some more time to think about it. So I won't be giving a unanimous consent when it comes to third reading, but I will still be supporting second.
Thank you, Councillor Wiley. Anybody else want to speak to this motion? So on the table, we have second reading. All in favor? Opposed? And that motion is carried. Or that,
Number 10 now.
okay, no, I think we have to go through the process, do we not? No?
No, it's up to you.
It's up to,
Thank you, Your Worship. Those are just recommendations on the sheet, so we don't actually have to make those motions if council doesn't like to make those motions.
The motion is lost, so we can move ahead. I mean, it's good.
okay, all right. Thank you, and thank you for the discussion. Section 10, questions between councilors and council statements. Would any councilors like to make statement or ask questions to other councilors at this time?
I'd just like to just say to all counselors in our community to keep an eye out for all of the activities for Truth and Reconciliation Week, and for Teachers in the Crowd. There are just some fabulous resources online through the Canadian Truth and Reconciliation Committee, and through the Alberta Professional Development Consortium, and those are available actually to anyone. And plus the activities that are undertaken by our own community and by the Siksika community who walk with us in this work. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Are there any other councillor inquiries? Seeing none, question and answers of the CAO. Do any councillors have any questions for the CAO at this time? Seeing none, there are no administrative inquiries. There are no notices of motion. Next is correspondence. A letter from the Royal Canadian Legion, Strathmore 10, regarding National Legion Week. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. On September 11th, we received a letter from the Legion in Strathmore requesting that we proclaim September 17th to 23rd, 2023 as National Legion Week. The Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 10 here in Strathmore, has been a highly respected partner in our community for 100 years, consistently demonstrating commitment to local veterans and their families. And the partnership between our community and the Royal Canadian Legion is built on trust, collaboration, and mutual respect, fostering a strong bond that enhances community spirit, volunteerism, and supports the well-being of our residents. That being said, pardon me, while I look for my piece of paper here, I would like to move that Council proclaim September 17th to 23rd as National Legion Week in the town of Strathmore, and that Council authorize Mayor Fuel to sign the proclamation letter as presented in Attachment 1.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid. Now that we have a motion on the table, would anybody like to speak to the motion?
I just really support it. I support everything that our Strathmore Legion has done in the community. And I'd also like to acknowledge all the businesses and individuals and groups in the community who also support our Legion. I'm really grateful to them. and it has kept this Legion very vibrant. And thank you, Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Okay, we have a motion on the table. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Now, we are going to go into the closed meeting at 7:29. Can we have a motion to go into the closed meeting? Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you very much. I'd like to move that council move in camera to discuss items related to sections 21, subsections 1A2 and, 1AII, and 24, subsection 1A of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act at 7:30 PM.
All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you.